Hey guys, welcome to another weekly focus. So I hope you had a great week. So let's go through and I'll show you guys the trade recap. And the trade recap for this week is the same like last week's. So gold, no trade taken. You look at US30, the same thing, no trade taken. So NAS100, no trade taken, and the S&P500, no trade taken. So if you look at where prices are currently, we're actually playing on higher time frames, so we're looking at like the daily structure and even the weekly structure. So it makes it really difficult for you to get like perfect entries because you have to wait a little bit longer for price to realign properly. So let's look at the charts and I'll show you guys what I'm looking at. So here's the thing, we're looking at the DXY. Here's the first pair we look at every time, and the reason we look at the DXY again is just so you can have an understanding as to what price is going to do on other pairs that's, let's say, positively correlated with the DXY or negatively correlated with the DXY. So here's the DXY on the weekly time frame. Same market structure we've been seeing, and if you look at this piece right here, so price has been sat within this area for quite some time now, and it makes it really difficult for you to play with other pairs, especially indices right now, because the correlation between the indices and the DXY right now is not as expected. So normally you're expecting a negative correlation, but with the movement right now, the economic instability in the US, it makes it really difficult. So here's the DXY on the weekly time frame, same piece of price action we've been looking at. So you're looking at this impulsive move, you have your consolidation, you have an impulse, consolidation. So normally we was expecting this impulse to take out these highs, and that hasn't been the case. So price is currently stalling right now. So I'll show you guys what we're looking at. So now let's use two common principles. The first one is just like the psychological levels, and the next one is a trend line. So I can use the psychological levels and the trend line to anticipate what price is most likely going to do. So in a situation like this on the DXY, here's a weekly time frame. Since we had an impulsive move, we had a consolidation thing, and we had price moving all the way to the psychological level of 110. So looking at this, with a rejection of price going above 110, there's a high possibility sellers might keep taking prices all the way to the downside. And if they do something like this, then we're looking at this psychological level of 100 flat. So there's a high possibility sellers might take these prices all the way to 100 flat. And another reason for this is I'm looking at this area right here where you have this psychological level and you have this trend line. So going off of trend lines, there's a possibility price might still pull back to an area like this, so we can take buys. Going off of psychological levels, you have a rejection at 110, so you're expecting prices to drop all the way to 100 flat. So if you use both principles, psychological levels and the trend line, then you have a reason to expect prices to move all the way to the downside. Now if you start going to lower time frames, so you're looking at the daily, the 8 hours and stuff like this, you get a better understanding as to what the DXY is really trying to do. So last week we had this trend line put right here, and we was looking at price moving to the downside, taking out this lows, and up until this point, this is a low price created. So I'm going to zoom into the space of price action right here. So we're looking at this on the daily time frame. So what's the structure you're looking at? So what is price currently doing? So remember from the weekly time frame I just explained already, there was an inability for prices to go through 110, which is a psychological level right here. So going off of the other two principles, you have your trend, you have your psychological levels, and you have a trend line. So combining these principles, now you're looking at price moving to the downside. On the daily time frame, you have a structure move right here, which is price is making lower lows right here. So you have the impulsive move, price makes a low and it gives you a pullback. So you're looking at the pullbacks and you're looking at the impulsive moves coming in. So looking at this on the daily time frame, going off of just basic price action, if price is moving to the downside and it's making lower lows, what you're expecting is for price to pull back to an area like this, and you expect sellers again to take prices to the downside. So remember, once we had a movement thing, we had this impulsive move to the downside, and there was an inability for prices to go through this area. Now, it doesn't mean So once you have an inability for prices to go through an area like this, it doesn't mean buyers are now in control. So what you're seeing right here is a pullback thing, and that's what I've been watching. Similar thing, you had a pullback, so you've seen all these pullbacks coming in, and you're still expecting sellers to take prices again to the downside. So my analysis on the DXY remains the same. I'm still expecting prices to move to the downside. Now, how far is this gonna go? That's really difficult to tell. Now, let's say the DXY finds it difficult to go through an area like this. Now, what's the next thing I'll look at? So if the DXY finds it difficult to go through these lows, I'll expect this trend line to get violated. So we're looking at something like this, a break of the trend line. Once you have a break of this trend line, then I'm considering this impulsive move, pullback. So I'm looking at this now as a pullback. You get a break, you get a test, and you expect prices now to move all the way to 110. So those are two possibilities I'm looking at on the DXY, and it just depends on how price wants to move. But at the back of my mind thing, I know there's two possibilities. There's two things I'm looking at. So the first one is just a continuation move. So you get a pullback thing to this trend line, and you get sellers coming in again impulsively, and we take prices all the way to 100, like 100 flat, the psychological level. And there's a possibility we might extend a little bit lower because there's a trend line right there. So that's the first thing. Now, while expecting these prices to move to the downside, what if the DXY does something completely different? So if we get a breakout of this area, then I'm considering this entire move to the upside, and I'll look at this as a pullback. Inability, you wait for prices to come back, and we're taking prices all the way to 110. So those are my two possibilities right there for the DXY. So I can clean this and we put this on the chart. So we'll look at this next week as well. So there is this possibility, you get price coming back. That's the first, that's the second one. But you're looking at this movement here, you're expecting this impulsive move to the downside, to this psychological level, or even testing this trend line. So for now, let's stay at the psychological level. So two possibilities on the DXY. I'm going to keep this fixated on the chart like this. So that's it. That's what I'm looking at on the DXY. A continuation move to the downside. We still see sellers coming in. And if this happens, so you look at this one, this piece right here, you get a pullback, you get an impulsive sell. If this happens, then you want to keep an eye on pairs like gold. You want to look at things like AUD USD and other pairs, GBPUSD, Euro USD. I don't trade those other pairs, but I'll look at gold, and you should expect this impulsive movement to the upside if the DXY keeps dropping to the downside. Now, if the DXY breaks out of this area, so you're looking at this movement thing to the downside, so sellers are still in control like on the DXY currently. If it breaks out of this trend line, then it's a pause thing, because it might just come down a little bit, inability, and you see prices now rising to the upside. Then you start expecting sales on those other pairs, those pairs which is negatively correlated. Now, if a pair is positively correlated, then you should expect a movement thing like in the same direction. Let's say pairs like USD JPY. So that's what I'm looking on the DXY, and I don't have to go like to lower time frames, and I said this already. Looking at where prices are currently, you sat where, let's say you're looking at this on the weekly time frame, you sat on really higher time frame movements right now. So before I was looking at this on lower time frames, the daily, the 8 hours, the 4 hours and stuff like that. But looking at what's happening, like a bigger picture thing, it's best for you to stay on higher time frames, make this analysis on higher time frames, get the buyers, get the directional buyers on higher time frames. Then you can step down to lower time frames on your intended pairs and look for entries or look for trading opportunities. So this is the DXY on the weekly time frame, and I went down just to the daily. So on the daily time frame, my focus is on this movement coming to the downside. So I'm just looking at this, so I'm focused on this, and I'm asking myself, is price going to continue moving to the downside, or is a violation going to come in? If a violation comes in, I know what I'm expecting and I know what I'm taking price to. If a continuation comes in, so we're looking at this continuation, I'm just expecting prices to move to the downside to the next psychological level of 100 flat, and the trend line. So there's this trend line thing right here. So if I zoom out, you see the trend line I'm working with, and that's it. So you're looking at this trend line and you have the pivot point. So on the weekly time frame, the pivot point on on the DXY hasn't been tested. So if you look at this on the weekly time frame, so you're looking at this, so first pivot point, you have a pivot point right here, massive move, you have a pivot point, massive move. If price comes back to an area like this, you're looking at this space right here, pivot point, you're expecting a massive move, at least for us to test this highs. And in a belief for this to happen, you get a break and you see price selling to the downside. So that's how you do the analysis thing. That's how I do my analysis, trendline, psychological levels, and there's just a few things I'm looking at within this price action. So that's it for me on the DXY. So keep this in mind. Step back to the daily. Keep this in mind. So once you're looking at the DXY this week, I want you to pay attention to this piece of price action right here, this impulsive move. And this movement right here could be a pullback thing. Now you get a violation pullback, you see prices moving to the upside, or you get a continuation move to the downside, an inability of a price to get out of this area. So an inability of a price to break out of this area, then you see the DXY dropping again to the downside. So those are all possibilities, and now this is going to take some time for it to play out as well. So this might take 2 or 3 weeks for these movements to happen. So you're looking at this movement and a drop, or you're looking at this, it might take 3 weeks, it might take a month, but it's always important for you to have this bias and to look at price. So you're looking at price now, but you're anticipating in the future. It's very important to do stuff like this. So if price does something else, it makes it completely easy for you to adjust and take trades in the opposite direction. All right, guys, so that's my analysis on the DXY, and we'll take time and look at the first pair, and that's US30. All right, guys, so here's US30 on the daily time frame. And so looking at what I was anticipating last week, so I said this last week, not just on US30, I said this on US30, NAS100 and S&P 500. So I was expecting a break to the upside, I was expecting a pullback thing or just a retest, and for us to take this continuation move again to the upside. Now, coming into this, like coming into next week, has my bias changed? Has anything changed? Just looking at what price is doing, and I'm going to say no. And here's my reason. So I want us to look at this structure right here. So let's go off of psychological levels first. So if we're going off of psychological levels, price came from 45,000. The next area we can test is 40,000. So if you see sales coming in, it's totally okay. Why? Because there's a possibility price had a rejection at 45,000. So there's a high possibility we might see prices coming all the way to 40,000. That's a big possibility right there. Now, an inability of prices to go through this area, then you're expecting buyers to kick in again. So that's just going off of psychological levels. Now, looking at trend lines, what trend lines can we play with? So you're looking at this from a bigger picture thing. You have an impulse, you have a correction, you have an impulse, you have a correction, and there's an inability, then you get a crash. That's perfectly fine. So now looking at this piece from the trend line, so I'm considering this entire move as an impulsive move, and I'm looking at this movement thing right now as a pullback. So if we consider this as a pullback, so if I consider this as a pullback, I'm just going to zoom in and I'll show you guys what I'm looking at right here. So this piece right here, so everything you see as price is moving to the downside, this for me is a pullback, and it's a pullback because I'm playing with the bigger structure. So there's a bigger structure thing I'm looking at. So this is a pullback. Now, how do we treat this, or how do you look for entries in a situation like this? And again, I'm going to show you guys similar movements right here. So you're looking at this one. This was an impulsive move, then you had a pullback, then you had price moving to the upside, testing these highs. So it's the same thing. So you can look at the same thing right here. You had an impulsive move right here, you had a break, that was just a pullback, price came back, testing these highs. So you can do the same thing. Now, if you go on higher time frames, you realize what you're looking at right here is just an impulsive move. You get price pulling back. So what you're expecting price to find these difficulties from the sellers. Then you're expecting a movement back to the upside for us to test this highs, which is the same thing. Impulse, correction, testing the highs right there. Same thing. Impulse, you get a correction, testing the highs. Same thing. So now again, massive play, impulse, you get a correction, inability, and for us to test the highs. So this is a structure thing I've been looking at for a very long time, and I'm going to stick to it. I understand what's happening economically with what's happening in the US, the tariffs and everything, but technically you're going to see everything happening on the chart. So it's very okay for us to look at this. So my next target on US30 is taking prices back all the way to 45,000. And trust me, I'm not just looking at 45,000, I'm looking at 50,000. But the move to 50,000, it's a little bit like it's really far, and it's not going to happen like right now. But the thing that can happen right now, like the immediate move thing we're looking at, is a movement back to 45,000. So I'm looking at this space right here. How long did price take to drop all the way to this area? So it took about 41 days for price to drop to this area. So I'm looking at this movement thing to the upside. That was about 21 days. So let's look at this movement thing. It took about 32 days. So once price starts moving to the upside, so I'm gonna get this pullback thing, and I'm expecting the movement to the upside. Let's say 21, 32 days, somewhere around there. So that's something I'll be looking at. So there's still, it's just understanding where price is at and what you can do and how you can take this movement again to the upside. So here's my take on US30. Where is price at, and where is price most likely going to gravitate to? So there's two things I'm looking on US30. So the first one, it's a complete breach of this area. So you have these lows right here. So price can come down, so the sellers can come in impulsively, they take out these lows, and you get a test of 40,000, and you expect prices to move again to the upside. So that's the first thing. Now the second one, you see prices coming all the way to this low. You get an inability for prices to break out of this area, and you still see buyers stepping in, taking prices to the upside. That's my analysis right there on US30. So this is it. So if I was to put this, I'm looking at this space right here. First one, I'm looking at the movement through an area like this, just testing this area. An inability, you see prices moving to the upside, or you get this, you get price breaking out impulsively, testing this psychological level, and you see price moving to the upside. So either way, I still have this bias for prices to move to the upside on US30, and it's gonna be the same because it's the same structure I've been looking at, it's the same play. Now the only difference is it might take some time for price to do its movement thing. So I'll take this out and I'll show you guys something real quick again. So this is on the daily time frame. So if this is on the daily time frame, I want you to pay attention to something. So look at this space right here. So as price starts moving down, let me use this. As price starts moving down, you're looking at this space right here. Price takes out these lows. On lower time frames, you see this an impulsive move. Price takes out these lows. On lower time frames like the 8-hour time frame and the 4-hour time frame, price takes out this area. But currently you had an inability for price to move to the downside. Now you have these lows right here. So what is price going to do? This can drop all the way to this area, taking out these lows, going even further. Then you see buyers stepping in. So that's the play thing I'm looking at right there. So that's the play I'm looking at right there. So it's just them, it's like the structure thing, how price moves, the inabilities, and once you see it, once you spot it now, it becomes very easy. So for me, it's very okay for this movement to come to the downside. I'm actually waiting for this to come to the downside. So let's take this out. So I'm actually waiting for this to come to the downside, and this is on the daily time frame. Let's see the 8-hour time frame. I'm going to stick on the daily, so let's keep this on the daily time frame. So my anticipation on this is if price takes out this area, or there's a rejection around there, this is the movement thing I'm looking at, taking prices all the way to 45,000, something like this. So here's a move I'm expecting on US30. So I'm going to keep this right here. So let's see if we get a push thing. If you get a push, see prices coming down. You can see price testing an area like this, moving back, and you're expecting a movement to the upside. So I'm going to keep this right here. And let's see. So here's my movement thing on US30. So here's just an anticipation because price can go lower. As I said again, price can go lower. So right here, 45,000. So that's my movement thing on US30 right there. So again, I'm gonna look at lower time frames, maybe for entries, but just looking at this on the daily time frame and looking at this from higher time frames, I understand where price is at and where price can go to. So another possibility on US30 is you see prices dropping lower. So this can even drop lower, and it's the same thing. If price comes in lower, you're expecting a movement from around an area like this, a rejection around 40,000, and you're looking at the same price movement again all the way to 45,000 like this. So it just depends on how price wants to move. So if we get this movement thing, you see price coming in, pulling back, doing its thing, an inability, I'm still expecting prices to the upside. So something like this. So it just depends on how price wants to move and the areas it's really looking at and the price and the discount it's looking at. If we get a rejection around an area like this space right here, if you get a rejection around this area, I'm looking for those buys to the upside. All right guys, so that's it for US30, and it's I think it's like really straightforward right now. So technically everything is aligning. So you're asking yourself, if the US economy is like crazy dropping and everything, why is price not just dropping all the way to the downside like crazily? Because you can look at this on the weekly time frame and all those other time frames. Just look at what price is doing right here. So same thing I explained already. You have this impulsive move, you get a crash, and after the crash you're expecting prices to move to the upside. So same thing, impulsive move, you get your crash and you're expecting prices to move to the upside. So all I'm trying to do right now is determine how far the crash is going to go. And so you're looking at this space right here, impulse, crash, you see price taking out lows, taking out the lows, taking out the lows, and at this point there was an inability, buyer step in, pullback, and you had another impulsive move. So you can use the same price action thing on lower time frames, and that's what I'm looking at just to get those entries. So there's still a possibility we might get price pulling in deeper, which you're looking at this on the daily time frame. There's still a possibility you might see these prices coming in like deeper, so you might see a deeper pullback thing, and that's fine. So my take on US30 and all these other pairs is, once you see these pullbacks coming to an end, then you're looking for the buys. So all you have to do is gauge this, and based off of how you trade, based off of the levels you're looking at, you can use this principle, you can use this understanding, and you look for buying opportunities. So I'm still very bullish on these pairs, and this sellers coming in for me just a temporary thing. All right guys, so that's my analysis on US30. Let's look at the next pair. All right guys, so we're looking at NAS100, and again, here's on the daily time frame. I spent a lot of time explaining this similar movement on US30, so we don't have to spend so much time on NAS100 and the S&P500 because it's a similar play we're looking at. So looking at this, the bigger picture thing is price is moving to the upside. So how do you know it's a bigger picture move to the upside? You're looking at the impulse, you're looking at the correction, impulse, correction, impulse, correction, impulse, correction. So once you play, or once you're looking at plays from different time frames, it makes it completely easy. So look at this movement right here. You get an impulse right here, you get a crash, you get an impulse. Let's look at this. So you get an impulse right here, you get a crash, and you see price moving to the upside. You get a crash, you see price moving to the upside. Here you get a deeper crash, that's fine. You see price moving to the upside. So my analysis again on NAS100 is, I'm expecting prices to move to the upside. So this is what I was expecting last week. It didn't happen, that's fine. Let's take this out. So what we're looking at right here, so we're looking at this entire play. Everything, the movement thing to the upside. We're looking at this crash right here, and we're expecting prices to move again to the upside. So now the only thing I'll say on NAS100 is, first, looking at psychological levels, this might be a little bit tricky. So we had the crash coming in, and this is on the daily time frame. We had the crash coming in. We had an attempt from the buyers to take prices above 20,000, and there was an inability of prices to stay above 20,000. If we stayed above 20,000, this will have been a clear indication like we're just headed to the upside. So price actually came in, you had the crash, inability, and you had sellers stepping in. So now I'm looking at this piece right here, this movement on this. So here's the thing. So here's my catch on this piece right here. How is price going to react? So if we get an impulsive breakout of this area, I'm going to zoom in. So take note, was currently below 20,000. So if this keeps crashing, you can see this crashing all the way to 15,000 right here, because we're just playing from one psychological level to the next psychological level. So I'm looking at this space right here, break, impulse, and the crash thing right there. So looking at this space, if price finds it difficult to go through this area right here, what are you expecting? You're expecting the movement to the upside for us to take out these highs, and a possible movement all the way to the next psychological level, which is 25,000. That's it. So now if price goes through this area, so we're looking at this bigger picture move again, because it's always difficult for you to tell how far the pullback or the correction is going to go, because again, it's just the big boys controlling this movement and everything. So you're looking at this piece right here, impulsive movement to the upside, you had a crash, and you had price taking off. So there's a possibility you get a crash, you get a pullback, you get another stuff, and you see price moving to the upside. So those are all possibilities, but going off of this, I'm still expecting prices to move to the upside. So while expecting prices to move to the upside, I'm looking for areas where price finds it difficult to move to the downside. So you look at this piece right here, and again, this on the daily time frame. I'm just going to stick to higher time frames for now, but once I'm looking for entries, I'll step down to lower time frames. So you look at this piece right here. If price comes down to have a test of this area, and again, it's really close to that area, so that's a low thing right there. And sometimes you have to look at this and ask yourself, what are these guys really trying to do? Because we came from a buy thing, we had sales, we came in buying, and then we came in selling. An inability of prices to go through this area, I'm taking those buys to test this highs, and that's it. That's my take on NAS100. Now if we break below this area, it means we're just going to get a deeper pullback, which is not something I really want to sit through, because I've really been sat for like a week or two without taking positions on this. And again, I'm a swing trader, so I need price to align properly. Now if this starts dropping to the downside, it's completely fine. So let's say this drops again to the downside, giving you an impulse on the drop, I'm still going to look for the buys like to the upside thing. So it's just understanding where price finds it difficult to stop moving. Same thing, impulse, you get a crash, inability, and you see price taking off. So if you didn't trade it here, you can wait for this piece and you trade it. So if price keeps moving to the downside and it's difficult, again, you wait for this and you wait for this safer entry, and you take prices again to the upside. So it's not difficult, it's not complex, it's just being patient. The only difference is this is happening on higher time frames, which is something I don't like. So if you have this impulsive move and you get a correction on an hourly time frame, so everything you're expecting, the inability to stop and everything, it's going to happen real quick. So let's say you're looking at this on Monday, let's say latest by Wednesday or Thursday, you should have seen everything that's happening, the inability, and then you're getting ready to take prices again to the upside. Unfortunately, this is on higher time frames, so it makes it really difficult. So we might be sat in this again for like a week or two. But if I see like this difficulties for price to go through this area, then I'm looking for buys again. So let's say price comes back up, you get a rejection thing. So those are the possibilities I'm looking at right there. Something like this. And to see prices moving again to the upside. So that's it right there. So it's the same movement thing with what you're looking at on US30. It's just a similar movement thing. So this right here is what I'm expecting. An inability for prices to go through this area, then I'm expecting the buys. And again, if price drops to a lower, let's say to a lower price, I'm still going to respect the same thing. If price comes in lower, that's fine, it doesn't change anything. We're still expecting the buys, because once you have it, it's a swing move thing. So that's it, just possibilities. So all I'm waiting for is this inability of price to go through this area. An inability of price to go through this area, I'm looking for the buys. If price comes in lower, that's fine. I'll wait for the movement thing. So let's say price does something like this, it drops, comes in lower, that's fine. It's going to change its direction thing, and you get the movement thing to the upside. So those are the possibilities right there. There's not a lot. I'm just going to stick to what I know. I'm going to stick to what I'm expecting. So I'm going to take this out just to keep it clean. I might keep this here, and that's it. So the target for me, so I have two possible targets. First one, I'm just looking at these highs, and the next, I'm expecting prices to test 25,000. So let's see how the sellers control the markets this week. Let's see what's happening with the US economy and everything. If it starts balancing up and everything starts cooling down and everything starts coming back to normal, you start seeing those difficulties, you might see these prices then moving again to the upside. So that's my analysis on NAS100. It's a similar move, it's a similar play of what's happening on US30, and you look at the next pair. Once we look at the next pair, you see it's the same thing. It's like a copy and paste thing. Alright guys, let's look at the next pair. Alright guys, so here's the S&P 500. It is a similar play to what's happening on NAS100 and US30. If I just take my price back, you look at the NAS100 impulse correction thing, you're waiting for sellers to come to an end. You're looking at this on US30, same thing, impulse correction thing, waiting for them to come to an end. So you're looking at you're looking at the S&P 500, and it's a similar thing. Here on the daily time frame, how is price moving? You get the same thing, impulse correction, impulse correction, impulse correction. That's how price moves on these pairs. So you're looking at this, everything right here, impulse, everything here is a crash, is a correction. And inability of prices to go through this area, we're expecting prices to move to the upside. So I was looking at this space right here, it didn't happen last week. So let's look at psychological levels and see what areas we can play with. So price is currently playing between 6,000 and 5,500 on the S&P 500. So we had a massive play from, so look at this rejection thing around 6,000, and look at the crash that came in all the way to 5,500. Now with all the tension, with all the crazy things that's happening, we still haven't broken below 5,500. So we just had a crash coming in, we're holding around 5,500. An inability for prices to go through 5,500. It's okay for price to come down lower, test it, even go a little bit below 5,500. But if price comes back, holds above 5,500, you're expecting prices to then move back to 6,000. But personally, I want to see price testing these highs, and inability, and again, you see price moving all the way to 6,500. But the first area for me, like the target thing, is this high right here. So I'm looking at this highs right here. An inability for prices to go through 5,500, which is a psychological level. It might look stupid, and it might look, all right, you're just saying price, an inability for price to go through this level, you're expecting prices to move to the upside. It might look stupid, it might look simple, but it's not that simple, because once we decide to take the buys on these pairs, there's certain structures we're looking at, there's certain plays we're looking at. So it's actually like a pattern thing. So what we're doing right now is just getting the bias thing, like the market direction. Where is price most likely going to gravitate to? Where is price most likely going to move to? And that's all I'm doing. So I'm looking at this bigger picture thing, impulse, bigger picture thing, correction, bigger picture, inability, and again, you see prices moving to the upside. So when you start looking at this, bringing in psychological levels, bringing in trend lines, it makes it completely easy. So if price finds it difficult to go through this psychological level of 5,500, where do you think price is going to gravitate to? The next psychological level of 6,000. Now this ties, or this aligns with the bigger picture thing we're looking at. Impulse, correction, and another impulsive move. So my buy is on the S&P 500 again. Wait for these sellers to come in, wait for the sellers to show you an inability, and then we'll take prices to the upside. And there's certain ways you can take these buys, but we're not going into like the entry model and everything. We're just getting the bias thing. Where is price at? Where is price most likely going to gravitate to? And that's what we're looking at right here. And again, you can look at this in lower time frames. It doesn't really matter, because on the 8-hour time frame, it's just the same thing. So look at this. As price is coming down, it's very funny because if you was buying here, your stop loss is here, it's taking you out, it's taking people out, it's going to do all these crazy things. So it's going to drop down. Now it gives everybody the illusion now we're selling, but don't get caught up in this. So look at it, like look at this from the bigger picture thing. Impulse, correction, inability, you're expecting prices to move to the upside. That's a structure move I've been looking at on this pairs for a very long time, and it's not failed me for all these years. So I'm still going to look at the same thing. You're looking at this impulse, correction, massive movement thing to the upside. So in a situation like this, so you're looking at this move right here, impulse, you look at a crash and then another like a deeper crash, then the movement thing to the upside. If you don't want to buy here, you can wait for prices back here, because now it's showing you already like we're really moving to the upside. So it's the same thing. Just go, you know, with certain things you just have to back test it. Impulse, you get a crash. Once it comes to an end, an inability, you're expecting price to move again to the upside. So go look at it. Like you can look at it on lower time frames, you can look at it on bigger time frames or higher time frames. So you're looking at this movement right here, impulse, the crash came in, inability, you see price moving to the upside. So it's the same thing I'm looking at right here. So all I have to do is wait for this sellers to come to an end. So let's look at this, impulse, correction, inability, we're taking prices to the upside. So if this happens, what areas am I looking at? 6,000 and this high. So I'm looking at this psychological level of 6,000 and I'm looking at this high. So an inability of a price to go through, we're taking prices to the upside. So we're looking for buys off of areas like this. And again, here just an anticipation thing. I'm not buying right now, but I'm just showing you guys like my thought process thing before it even happens. And if it happens, then I'm looking for those buys. On NAS100, same thing, looking for the buys, just waiting for this inability right here. It's okay for price to breach this area, go a little bit lower, that's fine. Just wait for it to really come to an end, then you look for those buys. Now here's something, the deeper the pullback, the better it is for you, because you're looking at this risk to reward like 1:6. If it goes really deeper, you might get like 1:8. You look at this on US30, the same thing. If you get a deeper pullback, you just get better interest on this pair. So that's it right there. I'm gonna take this out. So that's what we're looking at. So on the S&P 500, similar thing. The deeper the pullback, the better it is for this pair. So I'm expecting buys on the S&P 500. So all I have to do right now is wait for these sellers to come in and wait for the rejection thing, inability, break. So you're going to look at that difficulty, then you're expecting prices to move to the upside. If price decides to go lower, that's fine. If it just goes, let's say, lower and deeper, you get a better entry thing. So that's my analysis right there on the S&P 500, and it's a similar move to NAS, US30, and most indices. Like most indices are moving like this way currently. So that's it right there. All right guys, so I hope this makes lots of sense and makes it really easy for you to have a look at this pairs and just anticipate how price is moving. So that's my analysis right there on the S&P 500, and let's look at the last pair. All right guys, so let's look at the last pair, and this is gold. Now this is on the daily time frame. So what we're looking on the daily time frame, where is price at and where is price most likely going to gravitate to? Let's look at the psychological levels we can play with. So price is currently sat above 3,000. Where is price most likely going to gravitate to? The movement thing is very straightforward. If price keeps moving to the upside, we're testing 3,500. So we went through 3,000, there was an inability, and price is moving to the upside. Now this ties with what's happening on the DXY. So if you look at the DXY overall movement thing, price is taking out this lows, pulling back, you're expecting this lows. And that's why I said, if we see this continuation move to the downside, then you want to look at pairs like gold, you want to look at pairs like let's say AUD/USD, and you really want to look for buys on those pairs. So look at this piece right here. So you're looking at this, is there a trend line you can work with? So we had a bigger trend line thing from here. I think this was on the weekly time frame, but looking at this right now, that is not a trend line you want to work with. So you want to work with this trend line in here. If you get price coming back, you get a violation, then you're expecting price to then take off from an area like this. So that's going to take time. So let's stick with what we're seeing right now in the daily time frame. So is this trend line right here. So where is price at? And again, price is currently sat above 3,000, where you're expecting prices to move to. I'm expecting prices to move to 3,500. That's it. So how is price going to move to 3,500? You're looking at the same play: impulse, correction, impulse, correction. So it's the same thing. This play is the same thing. Like, even the things I'm explaining on, was it NAS? Yeah, NAS, the S&P and all these things. Impulse, correction, impulse. Again, impulse, correction, impulse. It's the same thing you're looking at right here. So you look at this, everything. Impulse, you wait for the correction. Price then looks for these highs. It takes off. Same thing on the minor structure thing. Hold on, I'll show you guys on the 8-hour time frame, or maybe the 4-hour time frame. Right here. Let's look at the 4 hours. Let's see. Right here, same thing. So as price starts moving up, correction, 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 everything is just impulse. What happens? You get a correction thing and then the impulsive move. So again, you wait for prices to pull back and you see price moving. So it's all about market structure and how price moves. Price is going to make higher highs, higher lows for an uptrend, lower lows, lower highs for a downtrend, or it consolidates. Now within an uptrend thing, within an uptrend, higher highs, higher lows, you see something like this, or you get higher highs, price coming back, consolidation, and a movement thing. You can flip this and you look at it for a downtrend. It's the same thing. So that's the same structures I've been looking at, and I think I explained this already. Once you have your psychological levels like this, I'll look at this on higher time frames. Once you have your psychological levels, what you're looking at is price action within the psychological levels. So look at this beauty right here. So let's look at this. So you're looking at this, you see the impulse, correction, impulse, correction, impulse, correction. So once you see this within the psychological level thing, it's easy for you to then trade this because you understand how price is moving. So it's the same thing I'm looking at right here, but now this one, you might have to go on like lower time frames, because you're looking at this space right here: impulse, correction, impulse, correction. Now, how do you get involved in a situation like this? So this is on the daily time frame. If you start moving to lower time frames, you do the same thing. Here's a trend line on the daily time frame, here's a trend line on the 8-hour time frame, and we can use this on the 4-hour time frame as well. So just step down to the 4-hour time frame, and here is a piece of price action I'm paying attention to. Same thing: impulse, correction. Impulse, you're waiting for the correction so you can take another move again to the upside. So the bias thing with me for gold is still the movement to the upside, but then if price finds it difficult to move to the upside, let's say it caps around there and it comes in inability and then it breaks, once this happens, you step back to the 8-hour time frame and you start seeing the correction coming in to the daily time frame. So you look at this, an inability. If you see price breaking out, you're expecting prices to then come back to an area like this. You're looking at this pivot point set right here. So because you had a pivot point set right here, you're expecting the same thing for price to respect this area, and then it takes off. On this time frame right here, you can look at this on the hourly time frame. A pivot point was set right here, so you're expecting prices to pull back to an area like this pivot point and for price to move to the upside. So that's how I look at prices. First thing, I identify like the psychological levels I'm playing within, and the next thing I look for the price action within the psychological levels. And all you're waiting for, if it's in an uptrend thing, you let this impulsive move, you get the swing, you get a pullback, you get a break, and the price starts moving again. Same thing. So sometimes it's really difficult to gauge the thing like the movement, and sometimes you're waiting for price on the pivot point. Price gets to the pivot point, it doesn't respect, it breaks, and it delivers to the next trend line thing. So, or the trend line on a higher time frame. So if you look at this, we have a massive area to play with. So look at this piece right here, you have a massive area to play with all the way to 3,500. So if we start buying all the way to 3500. That's a crazy movement thing right there. It's gonna take time, but price is gradually gonna move to these areas. You might even see an impulsive move. You see a break, you see a correction, you see this consolidation thing, and you see a continuation again to the upside. So it's gonna give you like complex structures as price is moving to the upside. But that's my analysis right there. So there's no entry thing for me on this one. I'm just waiting for prices to pull back, and then we'll start looking for opportunities. But this is it on a bigger picture thing. So the bigger picture is we're looking at this, and we're looking at prices moving all the way to 3500 on gold. Now on this other pairs, on US30, I'm waiting for this inabilities right here. If I get the inabilities, I'm taking buys. On NAS100, if I see these inabilities, I'm taking buys. On the S&P500, if I see these inabilities, I'm taking buys. Now you might question my reasoning here because you're looking at this piece. It's a very impulsive candle, so price is coming down impulsively, like the sellers are coming down impulsively. That's okay. I'm still gonna look for the buys because I'm waiting for prices to show me this inability to move to the downside, and it's gonna show you. If it breaks out of this area and it's not that impulsive, just a shallow break, price pulling back, inability, go on lower time frames, then we're looking for those entries, and we're still taking prices to the upside. So that's it right there. The S&P, same thing on NAS100, same thing on US30, and on gold is quite easy. Wait for the pullback thing, look for your entry model, and you start taking prices again to the upside. If this breaks right here, same thing, wait for prices here, and you're taking prices again to the upside. And if it breaks out of this area, same thing, now you're trading below 3000, you're taking prices lower, step down, like step up to higher time frames, and you look maybe the weekly, the monthly, and it's going to show you what time frame is trying to deliver prices to. And if you want to sell, that's fine, but personally I'll just wait for the pullbacks to come in, then I look for the buys. There's situations where I'm going to take the sells. It all depends on the entry model, it all depends on the structure price it's showing me and the place we're looking at. So if I see this place, then I'm going to take it. But that's my analysis right there. That's like just my mark, like the bias thing, directional bias. I'm expecting prices to the upside. So in a situation like this, if I eventually see a pullback coming in and I get the buys, then I can hold this buys all the way to an area like this. So it might take, let's say, 3 weeks for this to happen, or it might take a month. If I get a good entry thing, if I get a good buy thing, I spend my entry model. So price has been moving to the upside, and I haven't really had an entry model to take the buys, because I'm not just waiting for this pullback to break and then I buy. No, I have a setup I'm looking at, and I haven't really seen it. So if I get my setup and I get my entries, then I can hold this all the way to an area like this. And if price finds it difficult and it crashes, and then that's fine. So again, guys, so it's not very difficult, it's not very complex like that. It's just you looking at price, understanding, having a bias thing, having a system you're working with, and you wait for prices to come to you. So DXY sells days, I'm looking for buys, days, buys, days, buys, and right here I'm still looking for buys. So that's my take for this week. That's my directional bias thing, that's my market focus, that's my breakdown. And if you like this, all right, just stick around. Make sure you watch the other week's videos as well, just to get an understanding as to what levels we're looking at, what levels we're coming from. And again, guys, if there's one thing you can take from all my videos, stay patient and trade consistently. And I'll see you during the next one. Bye for now.